Hey, Raiders, welcome to another rendition of First Chapter Friday with me, Mrs. Rezga. Luckily, I get to be at work today in the library. I feel so good to be here. Today's book is called Horrid by Katrina. It's either Leno or Leno, however you want to pronounce it. This is along the same lines as my past couple books, Thrills and Chills. So this one is going to deal with ghosts and parapsychology. It also, the character, she eats books, like literally rips the pages out, puts them in her mouth, like she belongs on My Strange Addiction. And so it's going to go into that as well. And before I get started with the chapter one, I did want to point out, sometimes when you read the front cover of a book and you're still not quite sure what it's going to be about, you can look in where all the publication information is. It's like the first couple pages where most people are like, ugh, what a waste. Why are they there? At the very bottom, it'll say subjects. And it'll go along and say eating disorders, fiction, sisters, fiction, secrets, fiction, ghosts, fiction, parapsychology, fiction, and that'll give you an idea of some of the themes and things you might encounter, or you will encounter in this book. So not all books have them, but it seems like when they're just first published, like this one is, you'll find those in there so you can look and see a little bit more about what the book is going to be about. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. There was a little girl. She couldn't remember the first book she had eaten, what it had tasted like, how it had felt, the scratch of it as it slid down her throat. She couldn't remember why she'd done it. She must have been a baby, a toddler, ripping pages out of a picture book about a talking stuffed animal. Had the smell of books calmed her down then, as it did now? Outside, the rain pelted down angrily. It sounded like muffled gunshots on the roof of the bookstore. But inside, surrounded by books, surrounded by the smell of them, she felt calm and tranquil, momentarily at ease, like the past 5 weeks had never happened. They'd made it to Maine about 30 minutes ago, but the rain had driven them off the highway and into this town with the strange name Kennebunkport. And Ruth had pulled over and idled on the side of the road until Jane searched bookstore on her phone and found this one. Might as well, Ruth had said. I don't want to go any further until this lets up a little. She wasn't used to driving in the rain. Neither of them was. It didn't rain like this in Los Angeles. If it rained at all, it was a delicate sprinkle that lasted 10 or 15 minutes and ended with a rainbow. Not all the time. Nothing as dramatic as this. Sheets of water falling so thickly from the sky that Jane couldn't see a foot outside the window. It has rained like this here at the high school. I remember like 2 years ago it did that. Anyways, the woman behind the counter was unpacking a box of paperbacks. Let me know if you need anything, she'd said when they walked in, although we'll run into each other soon enough in here. It was a tiny store built in a one-car garage behind a big Victorian house. Jane walked down the center aisle, letting her fingers brush across the spines of books until she found one by Raymond Chandler, a collection of short stories called Killer in the Rain. She pulled it out and held it. The cover featured a woman in a sea blue water, floating on her back, her hands outstretched over her head, one high heel on, one off. Ruth squeezed by in the aisle and Jane showed it to her, and her mother wrinkled her nose. Because of the rain? Jane said. I'll be in true crime, Ruth replied. She slipped past Jane. Jane brought the book up to her nose and inhaled. It had a sweet, musty smell. Nope, she couldn't remember the first book she'd eaten, but she could remember the first book she'd eaten purposefully, and that was maybe more important. Her 10th birthday, May 4th. The book was Alice's Adventure in Wonderland. Jane had the same birthday as Alice Liddell. A happy coincidence she had locked away inside her heart when she'd first discovered it. She liked to pretend back then that she and Alice shared more in common than just a birthday, that they might have been friends if they'd grown up at the same time, that they might have been as close as sisters. Jane always wanted a sister. She asked for a new bike for her 10th birthday, but her parents had gotten her a bright blue scooter instead. You don't need a new bike, monkey. Your old one is just fine for now, her father had said. Scooter was fun, but she'd ridden it up and down the street after dinner. But that night, back in her bedroom, getting ready for bed, she felt a dull throb of anger. She hadn't asked for a scooter. She wanted a bike with a basket and a bell, and her old bike didn't have either of those things. Her breath came quicker and quicker, and she felt her face go hot. She felt this warm ball of energy forming in the pit of her stomach, this growing anger that was threatening to spill out of her. She blinked back tears and stared at the book on her lap, and it was like a little light switch gone off on her head, and she thought, oh, I know. And she tore off a corner from the first page, and she put it into her mouth and chewed it. When she swallowed, she could feel it very distinctly traveling down her throat. She imagined she could even feel the tiniest thump as it hit her stomach. The feeling it brought was like some sort of liquid calm, like she was Alice, for real, but instead of growing bigger or smaller, she grew less angry. She tore off another piece and another, and bit by bit, she ate it. Just one page. And the next night, one more. And the next night, one more. After one, she felt full, but not a belly full, a happy full, a warm and tingly full, like the words had dissolved in her tongue and melted into her blood and fixed something inside her, smoothed out the edges of her 10-year-old brain, all the silly things she got so mad about. It took her a year to finish the entire book, a page every few nights, sometimes none if she was too tired or if she'd had a good day at school, if she's feeling happy. After a year, she'd been left with just the cover, nothing in between but air. Okay, I didn't finish the whole chapter. It is kind of long, but seems very interesting. I do notice, I do predict that something bad happened back in Los Angeles, and I find it odd that she refers to her mother by the first name. And it kind of reminds me so far of Lock and Key, where I don't know if you watched the show or read the comics. The comics are better. But something tragic happened and they moved across the country, I think actually to Maine, where they moved into a haunted house, essentially, an old family haunted house. So come check this out. You can place a hold on Destiny. Pick it up on Wednesdays between 8 and 3. And if you need help placing that hold, follow the video on the how-to section on the library webpage. You guys have a great weekend. Bye, Raiders.